things. We've talked about research is important. It's great. We love it. But if you have not done it before, like, where do you start? What is the process like? What can you expect? It sounds to me, I was a little bit like, the first time I did something with you, I was like, ooh, it sounds like it's going to be a little bit overwhelming. Like, what is this, like a 6 to 9 month project to a year? And wow, I loved every bit of it. And, working with your team made it just so easy. So I thought we could kind of talk a little bit, Todd, about how you and I have worked together, which is, how you work with all your clients, just getting started and just the whole process.
Yeah, I mean, so the process here at Ascend2 tends to be about a 10 to 12 week process. From the start, which is kind of a kickoff call to discuss your objectives and for us to understand what you're trying to accomplish, to a final report, like where you're at now, Larissa, where you have a report in hand and now you're going to launch it. So it's about a 10 to 12 week process. And how that starts is first having a kickoff call where we can kind of hear in your words what you're trying to accomplish and better understand your audience, because we're going to have to target your audience to collect the data, better understand your audience. We typically ask our clients, let's think about what that executive summary might say. If there's 3 or 4 talking points that you would like to have in that executive summary, what would they be? Not that we can manipulate the data, but we can use that framework to start crafting questions to be able to tell that story. So we try to understand, like, what's the story, Larissa, you're trying to tell? And then we can kind of work backwards to decide what kind of questions to ask.
So one of the things I appreciate when I've sat in and, done the kickoff calls with you is that I don't have to have a fully baked idea when I chat with you. Like, I know, kind of what my objectives are, kind of what the topic is going to be, but I find it so useful to just talk it out. And as I'm talking out, your team is really good at, like, how about we shift it a little bit this way, or does this make sense? So it's really a shared collaboration of thoughts. You're listening to me and helping me kind of extracting, like, what is it that you want to get out, Larissa? What is important for you?
What we try to do is, we have these 2 different groups coming together. We have our clients, like yourself, who has this expertise in your products and what you're trying to accomplish. And then we can bring in the expertise of how to use surveys to get information. And so when we bring those together, we're able to ask you questions about, okay, explain to us a little bit more about your audience, explain a little bit more about what their challenges are, what you think they are. And then we can, like, for example, a lot of times we try to talk about, okay, what are the different ways we want to segment this data to help with the story? Like, is it by company size? And our client might say, company size doesn't really matter. Or they'll say, oh, wow, there's a big difference between a mid-sized company and enterprise-sized company. Like, yeah, that's important, And then we can say, okay, let's make sure that one of our segmentations is company size. Or, it could be, is there an indicator that we can use to show if people are very successful at this, so that we can understand what they're doing compared to the other people in the industry. And this back and forth conversation allows us to determine how to ask questions so we can segment the data so that we can look at it in a more in-depth way. And that can only come by, like, kind of marrying together the client and what we know about the research process.
Yeah. And as you said too, because storytelling through data is so important, that it's developing the surveys and so forth in a way that allows that story to come through, from beginning to end. Um, peppered with some really great stats. I'm always about a good marketing stat. So throughout that process, it's not just though a collection of statistics. It really is the story of what the problem is, for example, and an end result. Then you get these great nuggets of information and these aha moments, and it's a seamless journey, I think, that we're able to really showcase through a good research piece. So we do kick off. You design survey, but I guess obviously before you design the survey, I know we then start creating the questions. And that's a process when we do a lot of brainstorming and back and forth.
Right. So after that kickoff call, we try to go back and develop a draft of survey questions, and then work back and forth with the client to, fine tune those. Not only in like, are we asking the right questions, but also the design of the survey, making sure that it's not too long, that we can test it. We can test it on the back end to make sure that there's not going to be choke points in the survey
Right.
that cause people to drop off, and just kind of the science of the survey process we can infuse there. But we're working toward getting a final version of the survey questions and then putting it out into the field. And we work with the client to target the right audience. So maybe, maybe that audience is only interested, or maybe the client's only interested in, for example, North America. Maybe they want it global. Maybe they only want to talk to executives, or maybe they don't want executives. So we kind of work through like the audience that we want to target with that survey. So we're getting the data back that's appropriate for analysis.
So I have a question, and I don't think I've ever asked you this, but one, where do you even find survey respondents? Are they compensated? Like, how does that work?
Yes, I mean, typically they're compensated, and we work with a variety of different sources. Once we work with our client, then we work with a variety of different sources that we can go to build that audience that we fielded. And we have experience, for example, just for example, if we know that we want to go to Larissa because she meets the criteria of a marketing professional, she's the right industry, we may have gone to her before. So we have not only data points of demographics of a person, but we also have, if they've done surveys with us in the past, then we also know that they're legitimate, right? That they're legitimate.
Right.
That next step after we we've got enough participants, we close the survey, then we do we validate the data, make sure that everything looks correct, and then we do the analysis. And so that analysis process is we're looking through, both the overall, if we have 400 people who answered each question, we have not only the overall results, but then we have different ways we segmented the data. Like, for example, as I mentioned before, maybe by company size or things of that nature. So we have a lot of different ways to look and analyze the data. We go through and do the analysis, and then we come back to the client with a proposed table of contents and the key findings. So, we give them the raw data so they can see that as well, because they might have insight that we missed, but we kind of provide for them here's a proposed table of contents, here's the highlights and what we would want to highlight in the actual report. And then that's that for us, that's the next step with the client.
So another good thing I want to make sure that we mention too is that when I work with you, like you said, you do give us the raw data as well, but included with your program is I get a really nicely designed report, in my brand colors. I get a revision if there's anything I see, but just designing the report, I have a limited resources on my marketing team. So to be able to get that from you is so it just saves so much time. And then as soon as I get that, then I can go into all of my other strategizing on how I want to promote it, and some of the things we talked about as far as webinars and podcasts and so forth.
Right, because once we come to the client and we give them a proposed table of contents, then we can go back and forth until they say, yes, this is the story that we want to tell and the data that we want to highlight. And then we go and we actually write the content. And then once the content's approved, then we design the report. And from that, when we're working on that, a lot of times, like I know that you are already setting up the campaigns and how you want to use it. So kind of like what we're showing here as far as the strategy of, how do I want to amplify and distribute this report and this data. And so while we're working on like writing the content and designing the report, our client, they don't have to, but a lot of times that's where they can start that strategic process.
If I'm trying to promote a product and the research supports the product I'm trying to promote, it doesn't do me any good to now be the expert to start talking about it. It just is so much more credible when we can have yourself on it, and I can remain impartial. You can ask me questions, and it's just so. I love conversations, like in a podcast format, especially, but in webinars, it just leads to that authenticity that I think people can dial in on more and really relate to.
Yes, and so I think that is a lot of value, and you the more you do it, the more you think about it from the standpoint of, like, I always encourage our clients to, start the conversation and in the quantify the aspect that we talked to 350 people. Here's what they said, and it's the framing of the conversation that can be very helpful.
Yeah, exactly. So, gosh, I think we have like all of these amazing points, and I can't believe that we've already come to the end of time. Not, time isn't the end of the world, but I guess our time together. Is there,
yes.
Is there any last thoughts that you'd like to share, or did we get them all out?
We sure got a lot out, and so I really appreciate the time. I would just say for our audience that we really enjoy this stuff. So we're very happy to talk to individuals. And sometimes, the reality is maybe sometimes research is not the right solution at a specific time for a company, and that's fine. But we always enjoy the conversation to help provide insight and perspective to see if it's right for you. Just like any other type of marketing tactic or channel or whatever you're trying to work on, you really have to decide. Not only understand it, but then how does it relate to your current objectives and goals that you have?
I absolutely love working with Todd. Highly recommend that, if you want to start somewhere, obviously I'm always going to plug Todd at Ascend2. But with that, thank you for joining us for another amazing episode. If you're interested in learning more, I invite you to follow our podcast. We're always talking to some amazing people, sharing insights on data, practical uses for marketing. And so with that, stay data-driven, stay creative, and we will catch you next time. Thanks all.
Thank you.